Okay, good morning, GPAR. Welcome to Coffee Talk. We're glad to have so many people here with us at 10 o'clock for our conversation with Councilman Domb. But before we get there, let's talk about some other stuff that's going on. Currently, we have a call to action in place, and that's related to the current City Council conversation as it relates to property assessments. Hopefully you've responded to that call for action. We really need for our Realtor members to amplify our position as it relates to the assessments and how we need property owners to get a level of relief. It's super important. So it only takes a couple of clicks, a couple of taps, a little bit of information, and boom, you can send out the message that we need City Council and all City Hall to hear. So please do that. We'll drop that link into the chat as we start to move along here with today's conversation. So if you didn't see it in your inbox, we'll make sure we get that link in there. Like I said, it doesn't take much to make your voice heard in City Hall. So please respond to the call for action. Looking ahead to Thursday, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we're going to have a workshop by Janice Benstock. She has been a great contributor to our organization. She's done numerous presentations and workshops for us. She has served on our board of directors. She's a PAR director. She's a great instructor. And what's the focus of this workshop? It will be the listing contract. So please join us 1 o'clock. That will run from 1 to 3. 1 to 3. Got my time right. 1 to 3 on Thursday. We'd love to see that room jam-packed with folks. So again, great valuable time to invest and learn a little bit and to develop and improve your skill set to be better at your job day in and day out. So one final thing, I'm proud to go ahead and welcome a new addition. No, Lori and I did not have a baby, but we have a new staff member. We have a new staff member, Mackenzi Hockensmith. Where is Mackenzi? Raise your hand. Maybe we can put a little spotlight on her. Boom, there we go. That's Mackenzi. So she's our new communications and engagement manager. We're so glad to have her on board. She just started yesterday. We're super happy that she came back for day 2. So we didn't scare her off yesterday, but welcome to the team, Mackenzi. And we look forward to working with you and helping out our members with the stuff that they do day in and day out. So with that, good morning, Jake. Where are you, Jake?
Good morning, Matt. Good morning. Good morning, GPAR. Thank you all for being here. I'm remotely surprised that everyone's here, but we've got a popular figure here this morning with Councilperson Domb, and so yeah, we'll get right in. Thank you, Allan, for being here. Appreciate your time. Know you're all very busy right now, and I guess everybody knows your story, so we'll skip the intro and just get right into it. Safety continues to be kind of a problem right now in every neighborhood, whether it's actual violent interactions or the perception. What are you focusing on regarding public safety? And if you can talk about your efforts in Kensington a little bit.
Sure. Thanks, Jake. And
thank you again for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for being our president this year. I know what that's like. So we really appreciate all you're doing for GPAR. Thank you.
Thank you.
So on public safety, by far the #1 issue. I think we saw a recent poll that 71% of the people in the city of Philadelphia feel that is the #1 issue by far. Doesn't compare to anything else. Everything else is below 20%. But if you don't feel safe, doesn't matter what the taxes are, doesn't matter what anything is, we need to provide a safe city. And I think all of you are seeing that in the real estate world. You're seeing people who are a little skeptical about coming into the city to buy. And you're also seeing some sellers who are probably saying to you, I've had it, I'm done, I'm moving to the suburbs or somewhere else. I don't feel safe living in the city. That is a real issue. I will say this, and you should share this information. 90% of the serious crimes occur in roughly 10 to 12 zip codes throughout the city. And it's 22nd and Diamond, it's Kensington, it's Southwest Philly. 90% of the serious crimes. Now, nationally, nearly 80% of the murders across the country involve a gun, a firearm. But in Philadelphia, that number is now approaching 90%. So we need to act now while we're doing this budget and while we have the federal resources to invest in some sustained long-term change. So here are some thoughts on solutions. Investing in actual programs that reduce gun violence. We know that GVI, Group Violence Intervention, is a great program. It's been used in other cities. We've started to use it here. We're only allocating a few $1 million to it, $3 or $4 million out of a gun violence program of over 150 million. But it is a program where we've identified 8,000 potential people who are the shooters or the potential targets. And basically we go to those people who are the shooters and say to them, I'm being very politely direct, you have two choices. We'll help you get on the right path with the job and so forth and housing, or if you go down the wrong path, there will be serious consequences. And that has been in other cities like Newark and Chester and across the country, a very successful program. In fact, Dallas, Texas, just to show you some history, I read the Dallas, Texas security report, what they're doing there. And they actually have in there, they're talking about what Philadelphia did in 2013 called focused deterrence. They actually took a page out of our book. Sadly, we stopped doing that in 2016. We need to get back to those types of programs. So I've also been involved with law enforcement across the board, from the U.S. Attorney to the Attorney General's office, to ATF, to FBI, to the police commissioner, and to the district attorney until recently, and speaking to them on all issues on how we can cut down on the violence. You may have noticed that we eliminated the residency requirement for police. That came about from my group, who suggested I have a hearing on how do we recruit police officers, where the district attorney sent the deputy district attorney into the hearing, stating how detrimental it was to have a requirement of residency for police officers when we're down over 1,000 police. We need to open it up. A week later, the administration heard that hearing and opened it up. So that was successful. But we need stronger partnerships across the board. And here's the other major factor. We invest all this money. And about 2 months ago, I introduced a resolution in council supported by all members, sent to the mayor, asking the mayor to use our academic advisories like Penn, Drexel, St. Joe's, and other schools, even Temple, any school, to examine what we're doing, all the money we're investing in gun violence, and tell us what's working and what isn't, even after 30 or 60 days. Instead of us spending $150 million and finding out next year we wasted $100 million. We need to determine what's working, stop what's not working, and reinvest in what is working. It's like really important to measure what we're investing in. It hasn't happened yet because the mayor has not done it, but he needs to do it. Also called for an emergency declaration in Kensington. I don't know how many of you, I think many of you do know about Kensington because you probably sell real estate there. I go up there twice a week. It is a disaster. We have over 860 people living on the streets of Kensington. I am told, I don't know how accurate it is, that 50 to 60% of the people are not from the city of Philadelphia, but they have obtained Philadelphia IDs. It is a humanitarian crisis. Openly dealing drugs, openly injecting drugs into every part of their bodies, laying on the streets, sleeping on the gutters. It is a disaster. June 4th, Saturday, and I'm up there twice a week, usually in the evenings, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. But June 4th, I decided to take the subway from 15th and Market up to K&A on my own. I was incognito, had a baseball hat on, a t-shirt, shorts, and sneakers. And I didn't want anybody with me. And I will say this, I didn't even know how to get up SEPTA pass at 15th and Market because I rarely take the subway. And it was the person behind the booth was so accommodating. He had no idea who I was. He probably thought I was just some schlub, right? But he was so accommodating to me. He came out from behind the booth, helped me get the pass. The place was impeccably clean. The platform at 15th and Market was clean. I got on the subway, it was packed. This was Saturday at like 2:30 at this point. Tons of people. In fact, what impressed me was there was a woman holding a 2-year-old baby, and a 16-year-old boy says, "Miss, you can have my seat." He gave up his seat for the woman. And I kind of love that. I went over to him and said, "Hey, that was really nice of you." But I went 11 stops and looked out the window and saw all the stops from Somerset, Huntington, impeccably clean. Got to K&A, impeccably clean. Came downstairs, it was a disaster on the street. I mean, I saw people dipping needles in their arms, needles in their necks, needles under their arms. Even McPherson Square, I walked down Kensington Avenue to Somerset, stopped at 5 businesses, actually went inside and thanked those businesses for being open because otherwise everything else was shuttered. It is a nightmare. If any of you ever want to take a ride through or a walk through, feel free to reach out. I'm going to volunteer Matt and I'll organize a little trip so you can see what's going on there. But we've called upon the mayor to declare this a FEMA site. It was through a resolution in council supported by all members, asking the mayor to call upon the Governor Wolf to go to the federal government, declare it a FEMA site. There's no accommodation in the FEMA practice of late for a open heroin, open drug market to do this, but it was my opinion that we've been dealing with this for 25 years. We've never resolved it. In my opinion, we've acted like it's an area of containment, like it's okay for people to do this. And we need something out of the box, something dramatic. And I spoke to Governor Wolf about it. He is on board with this idea. And we're asking the federal government with the state and the city to come up with a Marshall Plan to figure out how we solve the problem. And it probably starts with something like you saw last week, where Josh Shapiro, our Attorney General, arrested 20-something drug dealers. It starts with federal drug enforcement, shutting down the drug traffic. Then it probably going to give you the simple analysis. Go to the 60% of the people that are not from Philadelphia, help them compassionately get relocated back to where their families are and get them services and help. If they don't want to go back there, get them help here. And the 40% that are Philadelphians, get them help, get them treatment. Let's get them help. This is a disease. We need to help them. And so, but we cannot allow people to live this way and allow Kensington to be destroyed. We also need to probably have a field marshal, for lack of a better word, whose full-time job is within 6 months to a year. This has to get resolved. We cannot allow this to continue. So that's the purpose of this declaration. I'm waiting hopefully for the mayor to reach out to the governor. We had a call set up for May 6th. The mayor had to cancel it, and we're trying to get it rescheduled. And Erin Santamore, my chief of staff, who's on this call, has been diligent in trying to get this accomplished. And I give her a lot of kudos for that. She's doing a good job. So that's on the public safety issue. You probably have seen, I'll share one other detail with you. I think 3 weeks, this Wednesday will be 4 weeks. I did my second, maybe third ride along in a police car in the 22nd district. It was a Wednesday night from 6 to 10 p.m. I saw 7 shootings. When I saw 7 shootings, I mean, I didn't see the actual guns being fired, but I saw victims of the shootings that occurred, 7 of them, Wednesday night. 5 of them were on a street called Bouvier, 2 were on another street. All were drug related. But what was also impactful to me was how well the police handled it. They did a great job. The police did an amazing job. I'm very proud of what they did. We have an excellent police force. Are there 5 or 6 or 10 people that aren't great? Maybe, yes. But we have thousands that do an amazing job and love their work and have a lot of pride in their work. What was shocking to me was I was sitting in the front seat with a vest on with a sergeant driving through, and 22nd district is like 17th and Diamond. It's the highest crime district in the city next to Kensington. And I've done the other one in Kensington. So I've seen the 2 worst areas. But what was shocking to me that he pointed out 10 to 12 people on the street where he said to me, I've arrested them 4 times in the last 2 years. I've arrested them 3 times in the last year. And then somebody comes up to the car and he knows the sergeant's name, and the sergeant knows this guy's name and said, I've arrested him 5 times in 3 years. And they're back out on the street. And I guess my point here is that that's probably not good policy. If we know people have gun violations and keep getting arrested, we probably shouldn't be continuously released. And that's a district attorney issue, I believe. Now, he may say there's not enough evidence, but it's a teamwork. It's between the police department and the DA, and the mayor's got to coordinate it. We need to get the bad people off the street. That's really, really important. So that's on the public safety issue. I want to talk about the economy, and I know you guys want to talk about property assessments. On the economy, let me just share with you that from 09 to 18, in jobs created in the United States that paid less than $35,000, the national average was 29% of all jobs created in a 10-year span paid less than $35,000. In the top 50 cities like Philadelphia, it was 28% paid less than $35,000. In Philadelphia, anyone want to take a guess? 60.5% of the jobs paid less than $35,000. So what does that tell us? We are producing poverty level jobs. And why is that? Because the jobs that pay 35 to 100,000, we are less than half of everybody else that are produced in the city. Suburbs have a lot of those jobs. They're out in Valley Forge, Devon, King of Prussia, Malvern. We don't have those jobs here. And why is that? Let's look at the top 30 or 40 cities in the country and the business taxation policies. In New York City, if you're a business, between local and state taxes, you pay 16.2%. In Philadelphia, you're number 2 highest in the country. We pay 16.1. 3 is California. They pay 8.8. Chicago pays 7. Boston pays 7. Atlanta pays 4. Let me repeat that. Philadelphia pays 16.1. Why, if you're a company, would you grow here, or why would you come here with that taxation burden? And I've been trying to tell this to my colleagues in administration that we need to lower those taxes. And back in May of 21, Aaron, my chief of staff, put together 2 bills for me to introduce. One was the lowering of the net income tax over a 10-year period from its current level of 6.2 to 0, which would lower our overall taxes. And the other was to reduce wage taxes over a time period to 3%. eConsult did a report that said, optimistically, in a 10-year period, if those 2 bills occurred, we would create 100,000 new jobs. Amazing, the biggest growth city's ever seen in a 10-year period. Sadly, those bills were defeated. I had 8 votes, I needed 9. And at the end, when 3 people saw I didn't have the votes, they voted against it. But that's what the city needs to do. What we're not doing.
Sorry, what's the argument against these bills? Like, what's the opposition to this stuff?
The opposition is tax the wealthy, tax businesses. Businesses can afford it. There's not a mentality of growing the economy. Now, everyone in real estate understands how you grow your business. You have to invest to grow your business. I'll give you an example. Do you do marketing? Do you do whatever, social media? You're investing to grow your business. We need to invest in our tax structure to grow this. We should be, our taxes, Jake, our budget's 5.67 billion. We should be investing at least 1% of that number, 56 to 57 million, in the tax structure to grow the business. We're not.
Right.
And that leads into the assessments. And I know that I should share with you my opinion of the assessments on the homestead exemption. The homestead exemption currently is $45,000. The administration proposed to raise it to $65,000. 2 of my colleagues proposed to raise it to $90,000. And if you raise it to $90,000, just so you know, of the $450-something million that the real estate taxes have generated for the city, about $400 million of it will be used for the homestead exemption, and you'll have $50 million left over for about $300 million in requests from my colleagues of different programs, whether they're gun violence or whatever, not including anything for tax reform, 0. And when you look at the numbers, I don't know if you know, by the way, 14 people signed on to 90,000. 2 people did not. The council president and myself did not. And I did not sign on to it because I did not see any facts or numbers based on a $90,000 number. I don't see how we can make a decision without a fiscal analysis. When you look at a $90,000 homestead, for those of you who may not have seen the data, about 50% of the city pays less taxes or no increase. 50% could pay less taxes or no increase. At 85,000, 60% will pay more taxes and 40% will pay less taxes. This is after 3 years of appreciation, 40% will pay less taxes. At 75,000, I have to look at the whole city. 72% pay more and 28 pay less. And to me, that was the sweet spot, 75,000. But the other reason why I believe it should be 75, and it probably won't be, I think it's going to be 80. But the reason why I wanted 75 is because what we could also do is lower the net income from 6.2 to like 5.95 to 5.99, and also put a wage tax reduction in there. So we can try to grow, at least symbolically, we could try to grow the economy in the city. You need to invest in the economy. You can't grow your real estate business if you don't do social media or any kind of marketing. Same thing with the city. We can't grow the economy if we don't invest in a tax structure. Remember, Jake.
Sorry, I mean, with the shift from work from home, the wage tax is theoretically going to take a big hit over the next foreseeable future. Is anybody raising? I mean, is that a reason? Is that can we utilize that to make a shift away from? Sorry.
You have to remember the wage tax. We have 41% of the population in the city works in the city but lives outside the city, and the majority of the shift of work from home that's affected are the suburbanites who are not coming into the city. If you still live in the city and work in the city, you're still paying the wage tax.
Right.
It's the suburbanites. So what we're trying to do is slightly lower, at least symbolically, to get them to come back. But the biggest issue to get them to come back is twofold. One, public safety, and two, their employers requiring it. And three, as I see the market slowing and I see us coming into a bit of a slowdown, possible recession, I do think the shift will occur where employers now will have more ability to encourage people to come back to work. But I also, here's the other part of this. We have a city where not only do we lose wage tax when these 41% of the people don't come into the city, but they're not in the city buying goods and services, going to restaurants. It's the whole economy. It's an economic loss for the city, and we need to get them back. That's kind of an overview. I do want to talk about one more thing, which is very, very positive for us. It's called life sciences. That is the future of Philadelphia. Quick story, last May or June, I don't know if you follow the news, but Penn came out and said that cell therapy and gene therapy, many of the square footage was going to be moved out to Malvern, and we were going to lose like 150,000 square feet. I called Kevin Mahoney, who is the president of Penn, who's been a friend of mine and a supporter, and said, Kevin, I was very direct. I said, Kevin, this is like putting a knife in my heart, losing this kind of business. What can we do to keep in the city? He said, talk to Jim Wilson. He's the head of cell and gene therapy. Jim Wilson hired a doctor named Carl June, who's had tremendous breakthroughs in pediatric cancer and curing young children. It's really amazing what's going on in medicine. And for those of you who don't know, Penn is the reason we have a vaccine in the world. It was their formula that helped create that vaccine. Pretty amazing to say we're from Philadelphia, and Penn is the reason why we have a vaccine. We should all be very proud of that. So coming back to life sciences, I introduced Jim Wilson to Jerry Sweeney. We had a meeting because I wanted Jerry to build 500,000 square feet out of Schuylkill Yards, 500,000 for life sciences, so we can keep those jobs in the city. That's what we need to do. We need to grow and keep these jobs in the city. It was very slow going, so recently hosted a dinner on May 6th. I had 12 life science companies and I had 12 developers from Philadelphia. We had 35 people in the room. Jim Wilson and I hosted it together. It was phenomenal. From 6 to 10, 4 hours. I had to tell the people to leave after 10 o'clock. They didn't want to leave. We had all these major life science companies in the city and all the developers with one goal: build it in the city. We made a lot of connections, and I think we need to do more of that. And I think we also have to come from this perspective. We can't say to businesses, you need to lose so so-and-so can win. We got to create the situations where both sides win. It can't be a lose-win. It's got to be a win-win. And I will say that these 12 life science companies and 12 developers came away from that meeting very positive. Commerce Director Ann Nadol was there. Former Commerce Director Alan Greenberger was there. We had all the major developers there. It's something we should be doing in almost every business in the city, bringing business together and saying, what can we do to expand your business in the city, help you, and grow new businesses to come here? One of the biggest things that came out of this dinner was the lack of talent in this industry. And so we're working on that now with Drexel and others to create a pipeline to develop talent. Because if we develop the talent, the companies will come here. Anyway, I can keep going, but I'll end on that note and open it up for questions.
Again, yeah, thank you for your insight. It's good having you here. So last Friday, there was a hearing regarding the Community Land Trust getting preference in applying for land to develop from the land bank. And you were one of 2 no votes. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Well, the Community Land Trust bill that was sponsored by Councilmember Gautier would create a preference intended to incentivize non-competitive sales of city-owned land to nonprofits known as community land trusts, CLTs. The development models that assume at least 50% of rental units to be leased by households whose income is at or below 50% AMI. I voted in opposition last week because I had concerns that we would further hold up the city's ability to sell land. It's hard enough to sell the city land, which already takes 1.5 years to get done. That's with a buyer that has financing to do the project. Now just think about this. Well, everyone on this call knows that mortgage rates and interest rates have pretty much doubled in the last 3 months. Doing financing today jobs is not easy. And so while the intent was good, trying to give CLTs access to land for affordable housing opportunities, just to me wasn't the most efficient way of doing it. And in addition, I will say that I did speak with several people involved with the land bank None of them thought it was a good idea. And I come from this school. If I put someone in charge of a department and I ask them for their recommendation and they don't recommend it, that has a lot of weight with me. And why they weren't there is really concerning to me. So that was my reasons why I voted against it. But I also felt economically we can develop faster, quicker, and more efficiently using the private sector to develop affordable housing.
And are those relationships being using
That's already being done. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, Mo Rushdie was one of the people that testified. He has done affordable housing and he gave examples from start to finish in 6 months. And the rental rates were like $850 to $1,100 a month. That's pretty affordable.
I know President Clark is working on this $100 million towards affordable housing for homeowners. Where do you see that ending up?
I think it's a 400 million. You're talking about the 400 million package, $100 million per year.
Yes.
So I think they're in the process now of financing that. We're in the process of discussing how we're going to build these affordable homes. They were going to do second mortgage grants. I brought up the idea of doing a buy down, a permanent buy down, because a permanent buy down really makes housing affordable. And a permanent buy down, for those who don't remember 1981 and 82, when interest rates were 20%, that's how we sold real estate. We did permanent buy downs. So a permanent buy down, just to explain it for those on the call, if the current mortgage rate's 5.5%, you can buy the loan down to 3.5%, and it might cost 6% of the loan amount to do that. But it is a permanent loan. And if you do it through FHA, which is really the way to go, that loan is assumable. So it helps the low income buyer not only afford the property, but makes the property more saleable down the road. By the way, they never heard of that buy down. It's like brought it up in council.
I had never heard of that. I had never heard of a permanent buy down. That's fascinating. So coming back to the assessment stuff, just because
Sure.
We've seen increases, an average increase of 31%. Obviously, the increases are somewhat overdue, but we also have extreme cases with over 100%. Where do you see the relief package ending up? Can you speak to the process of all of this a little bit and how rushed it feels from where we're sitting, and where do you see it?
Look, it's very rushed. The city didn't do anything for 3 years, probably due to the pandemic. It's going to be their reason for it. And then all of a sudden they gave it to us so late in the game. Like really, it should have been done in March. Even that would have been late, but giving it to us when they did is really late in the game. I think the first step for the members here is to first try to help the homeowner verify if the assessed value is even accurate. And if it's not accurate, they should file an appeal. I've seen some properties that are just not accurate. Look, everyone makes mistakes. No one's perfect. And it might be that 10 to 20% of the assessed values aren't accurate. And for those that are really high up, I think you should file an appeal and give your reasons why. And it wouldn't hurt to even speak to an appraiser to get their opinion, because you probably might, for those properties that are over a certain dollar figure, you need an appraisal in order to appeal it. I think it's over $1 million. But what I have noticed when I looked at across the board by district, I've noticed that Cindy Bass and Sherelle Parker's districts, I think they're the 7th and the 9th. I've seen some of the highest increases. 7th is Maria, but I think Maria's, Cindy's, and Sherelle's districts saw some of the highest increases percentage-wise, but that's because their numbers were so low. So they may have had a property like in Kensington area or in Juniata that was 50, 60,000 value, and it went to 90,000, and the paper reports a 50% increase. Now think about that for a minute. It went from 60 to 90. Yeah, I get it. That's payment shock. But if we're increasing the homestead by 30,000, they don't pay any increase. But see, it's misleading when you talk about percentages. What we need to do is talk about dollars. And I actually have those figures here about dollars if anyone has an interest. For those of you who are a little wonky, I can just share this with you. In the city of Philadelphia that has over almost 290,000 to 300,000 homeowners, the amount of people that received increases in excess of 3,000 a year were 4,000. The amount of people that received increases over 2,000 a year, this is after 3 years, was 9,600. The biggest increases, 130,000 people received increases between $400 and $800 per year after 3 years of no increases. Now, of course, you can't say this, but I will because I don't really care. But the good news, if there was good news, is that thank God, on average, property values went up 30, 31%. Because it would be a different story if I was here today telling you property values went down 30, 31%. What we really need to do is try to do everything, which is help people keep their homes, invest in the tax structure. I've suggested if we stay at 75,000, create a $5 or $10 million grant fund to make sure those people who are really struggling, those people who are making $15,000 a year and can't pay these increases and can't get into these programs, make sure they have money to pay their taxes and give them a grant. No, it's not worth it for anyone to lose their home. No one should be losing their home. And I would do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen.
And do any of the, relief measures that are being proposed, do you see, I
will say this, of all the cities in the country, Jake, we have the most progressive relief measures. We have all types of, whether it's long-term owner occupants, seniors, we have UPA when you're delinquent owner-occupied payment plans, and an UPA for those people that owe taxes. It can be as low as $25 a month, or if it's revenue department determines they can't afford it, it can be $0. We have some amazing programs. Now, the problem is not everybody knows about them. We do a great job in hiding them. And we should put in the tax bills, the inserts of all these programs. And we need to make it more easily for people to understand all the programs. That's part of it.
That seems like, is that even something, right? These notices aren't going to go out until supposedly September. The appeal deadline is October.
Right.
Is council going to make a push? Is the administration going to make a push to
We're
help
trying to make,
people?
we're trying to make a push for more education on this and more marketing, and council's going to do something about that.
Right.
So, and I also think community and civic groups can help here.
Right.
And I think realtors could help here. We can get we have how many realtors in the organization? Over 3,000, I think.
3,600.
That's amazing. We should, I remember it was like 2. We should make sure that every realtor has all this information so that you can become really knowledgeable about what's going on with the city and all these programs. It would be
And we are planning, we're sort of waiting for the everything to fall into place, but we are planning some programming regarding appealing and how to advise our clients and how to make people aware of these programs and things like that. So that will be coming out once we sort of see a final package from City Council.
It's tremendous goodwill. I've already seen a few realtors sending out information, by the way, about how to handle their taxes, which I thought was great PR for them and great for the city. I think it's a good marketing for realtors, but it's a great public service for the realtor organization.
Yeah. I have one that I'm just sort of curious to hear you speak about. There's a bill out there to increase the portion of the real estate tax to go to the school district. How do you feel about that?
I think the school district right now has gotten 1.4 billion in federal funds. I think in their 5-year plan, they look like they're pretty much okay. I don't think they actually need more money at this point. My biggest issue with the school district is to change what we're teaching. How are we preparing these students for the economy of not just today, but tomorrow? And, I've been a big proponent of mandatory teaching K through 12 of financial literacy, technology, and entrepreneurship. And then allowing kids 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, go to school for 4 days, work 1 day a week, get paid, get a job, and hopefully get a summer job. It's a life changer. Now, that's a long-term, Jake, investment. That won't happen, change the equation after 5 years. But in 10 or 15 years, we'll have a very different economy in the city, very different talent in our people, and we will become an attraction. What I have learned is the #1 asset in our city is our residents. And if we can raise the bar on their knowledge, we become attractive for companies to come here because we have the talent pool. The reason Amazon didn't come here was because we didn't have the talent pool. We need to create the talent pool.
Are you gaining traction on pushing financial literacy? I've heard you speak about financial literacy in schools. I agree with you entirely. Is that picking up traction at the school level? Do you
It's funny
see?
you ask that because Dr. Height in his farewell address to council talked about me and he's now implementing financial literacy in schools. Not as much as I'd like, but they
Right.
are doing it in different classes. I think it needs to be mandatory from
Right.
K through 12. In fact, I'm going to share with all the realtors on this call. I was a member of the top 300 realtors, maybe, I don't know, 15 years ago. And half of them, these are people that sell 50, 100, 200, $300 million a year, huge numbers. Shockingly, half of them had no money. And why? They spent above their means. They had all kinds of cars. One of them had an airplane, they had boats, they had everything possible. They just didn't manage their money well. And we should have financial literacy for realtors too, by the way.
I'll ask you the question that I love getting from my clients. What's going on with the real estate market? Where do you see things? How do you feel about where we are and what's going on?
So let me first, is your market Chestnut Hill in that area?
I mean, I do a fair amount in Center City. I'm with Elephant with Hicken. We're headquartered in Chestnut Hill, but I work sort of everywhere in between as well, but a good bit in the Northwest.
Let me talk about, I just want to talk about some of the assessments, then I'll give you my real estate overview. I did see a lot of assessments in the Chestnut Hill area go up dramatically. Some big numbers. Assessments that went up 100, 200, 300, even $400,000.
I've seen some pretty crazy. I mean, I had clients, their assessment went from 140 to 320. They paid 340 for the house, so I can't even help them appeal it. And they're going to get, a crazy tax bill. So,
Jake, the other side of that is for many years they were underpaying their taxes. Nobody wants to hear that. But that's
right. Yeah. Right. Yes.
But what I did notice is that the Chestnut Hill in that area had dramatic increases. And my analysis, which is back of the envelope, is that a lot of people who lived in the core areas, whether it was Center City or other areas of the city, and wanted to be residents of the city, moved to that neighborhood as like their suburban enclave during the pandemic because of the amount of land around those houses. It gave them that open space, and that property became more valuable because you could have open space and still have a city residency. So I think that helped that market. As far as the real estate market, what I'm seeing, and I don't see everything, I'm just giving you a quick off the cuff. The doubling of interest rates has sent a bit of a shock into the market, especially for those properties that are under 750, because they're more reliant on interest rates. Basically, interest rates have doubled in a 90-day period, the biggest dramatic rise I've seen in 40 years. And so I think once people get adjusted to it, because it's still relatively low, it'll take a couple months, they'll get adjusted to it, and it looks like they might continue to increase. But you have to remember, in the long run, since 1979, interest rates have been from 2.5, 2.75 to 21%. So if you're talking to a buyer and they're currently at 5.5, they're still at the very bottom of the market. I remember when Academy House was selling back in 1978, they had a special financing program that said 7.5% rates, you'll never see them again. In 1982, Independence Place ran a full-page ad. We have special financing only for Independence Place buyers, 13 7/8. Grab one today. And I think in context, think about that. So I think the market's adjusting a bit. I think that different sections are doing better than others. I think that your surrounding areas of the core of Center City are still doing pretty well. I do think, though, that the interest rate rise will take a few months to adjust in people's minds and payments. The rental market is scorching hot, not just in Philadelphia, but all across the country. There are rental bidding wars going on in other cities. There's very little inventory. You got to be careful here because as this continues, you'll start to see some of my colleagues put in bills for rent control. So I think there's real concerns on the rent control issue, which GPAR should be aware of, and so should HAPCO and others, apartment association. But in general, the more we can bring back the lifestyle of the city and bring back the public safety, the better the real estate will perform. I saw one comment in the chat that the sellers are selling to leave, and they're leaving because the lifestyle they had prior when they bought was better than today. I stated this in council, and I'm not happy about it. I said, last 7 years, our budget's gone up $1.7 billion from just under 4 billion to 5.6, 5.7 billion. But I can't tell you that the services we provided today are better than 7 years ago. I think they're worse. So where's the value? Where's the value of the city? We increased the budget 40% and the services are not as good. So we really need to, there's a lot of inefficiency in the budget and we need to correct that. So that's my response on the real estate market.
And is that game right as the voice of reason on city council about efficiency and right doing things with a business mindset? Do you have allies? I asked one of your fellow council members last time we were on, who are your friends on council? Who do you get along with, and who do you vibe with on council?
I'll say this: I'm friendly with everybody. Okay.
Okay.
But the ones that a lot of my go-tos are probably Kathy Gilmore Richardson, Mark Squilla, Derek. It depends. You know what? I've learned one thing in council. Today they hate you and tomorrow they love you. Okay. It depends what's going on. Okay. There's plenty of things I work with Kenyatta on, Council President Clark on, and even Jamie Gauthier and Kendra Brooks. The community gardens that Kendra wants to do, the 10 million. I think that's a good idea. I'm working with her on that. So it depends on the issue. I would say it's issue related more than anything else. But I will say that from the business standpoint, probably Derek has been my biggest advocate with me on the business taxes. He gets it.
We were on with him a few weeks ago, and right, he says all the right things. It's refreshing to hear.
Yeah.
It's encouraging, but then we want to see results.
What is different for me is that I donate my salary to 25 schools a year. So I'm not worried about re-election. Okay. And I just want to do the right thing for the city, not in the short term, but for the next 10, 15 or 20 years. And I think one of the things we are lacking as a city is we don't have really a 5-year growth plan for the city or a 10 or 20-year plan. Can anyone tell me what that plan is? We don't have one. And we should have one that we can share with the residents so they know where the city's going. And that growth plan should probably include how do we help our existing businesses expand and how do we develop growth opportunities for the new businesses like life sciences.
Makes sense. Just because I've had the same thought and somebody put it, is there any talk about a cap on the increases of the assessments to avoid sticker shock? I see Erin shaking her head right away. So
I don't think we can.
It's not a thing.
Right. And it's also, I think, a uniformity issue. I don't think we can do that.
Right. That makes sense. I thought that might be your answer, but
the numbers, when you look at the numbers, Jake, it's the percentages that are driving people crazy. When you think about a city that has less than 10,000 people, that'll have an increase of 2,000 or more after 3 years of appreciation. I mean, it's not terrible.
I just worry about the people who bought in 2020, 2021, who are going to get tax bill, or they're going to get bills from their mortgage companies for deficient escrow accounts. And they're going to have a payment that's $200 to $300 higher than they were expecting a year ago, 2 years ago, right? Like it's a big lifestyle change for people who just bought.
Well, let me ask this question to all the members on here. Do we say to people, you're buying a home for $300,000? Your taxes could be 1.4 times 300, or what's that, $4,200 a year? If they're less, that's a gift. But your taxes could be $4,200. I want you to be aware of
that. Yes, right. Especially when you're buying a property that's under assessed, that's something to be aware of. But I don't know. It's a big and right. It's case by case.
But I am suggesting to all the realtors that we do that,
right?
And let them understand that this is what the taxes could be. It's actual value initiative. If the city could raise it to the actual value, just be aware of it. If you have a gift now, great. But it could be that number.
So we went through this, in 2016 with AVI, 6 years later, we're going through it again now. Is this just the way we're going to operate, or is there a mechanism in place that this gets done with some system rather than sticker shock every 5 years?
I will say that it's supposed to be every year. It's supposed to be uniform across the board. And I think the pandemic kind of
You're right.
What occurred. So I'm hopeful that next year they'll do it uniformly across the board.
Okay. And let's finish up on a positive note. I mean, what are you seeing that gives you optimism about the city? Projects, developments, opportunities that are in the works. What are you happy about?
Continue to see more development. I continue to see tremendous growth in life sciences. We have some amazing life science companies here, and they are the future. I mean, just Jim Wilson out of Penn, I don't know if people realize he's formed companies that have a market capitalization of over $15 billion. I mean, we're known as the top in the world for gene and cell therapy. Sadly, by the way, half of those companies, once they started here, moved to Boston. We need to figure out how to keep them here because those are good paying jobs. I'll also give you a little anecdote. 1700 block of Walnut Street. Is this optimistic? A year and a half ago, it was 50% vacant. 1700 block was decimated, not just by the pandemic, but by the violence that occurred at the end of May of 2020. Today, it's 90% leased. That's a real positive, 90% leased. Sadly, one of the properties that is not leased, I own, but it's 90% leased. I also see Comcast coming back, even though it's 3 days a week. They started in April, which is good. Other law firms are coming back. We need to bring people back to the offices. That's important for safety and the economy. And I think in the long run, cities always recover. They never die. They always recover, and they always grow faster than they were before. So I do think Philadelphia comes back strong. And I also think that it'll be younger. I think some of the older people who went to Florida or the Jersey Shore may not come back that quickly, are selling their homes, but younger people will come in. The number one issue is, and we're getting better every day. South Street was unfortunate. Public safety, number one issue. Nothing else matters if you're not safe. That is the number one issue.
Okay. That's sort of all I have. What are you planning on for the summer? Are you? Yeah.
Continuing to work in public safety arena with all my law enforcement people. We're getting a new U.S. attorney appointed by the president. I'll tell you this, the ATF people, FBI, Attorney General, all do a great job. They're amazing. Police commissioner. The DA hasn't come to our last 4 or 5 meetings we've had. Hopefully he'll come back when we have a Democratic U.S. attorney. There's some politics involved there, which is a shame. I have also learned, Jake, that it's tough to get things done when you have politics involved. You can do a lot more when the politics are not part of the equation. If you put the politics aside, you can get more things accomplished. It doesn't help you politically, but it gets things done. And I've also learned in my 7 years, do as much work as possible and give credit to everyone else. Governor Rendell told me that one, and he's absolutely right.
I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
I'll finish up and then I'll turn it over to Matt. Are you going to run for mayor?
So I can say that I'm 99% considering that option. If I answered that question directly, I'd have to resign my seat. But I will also say this, if I saw someone else out there who I thought could do what I think I can do or better, I'd be happy to support them. But I've been in the city 44 years now, 45 years, and I'm heartbroken over what's going on. I've lived in the city. I work in the city. I've invested in the city. I don't even go to King of Prussia. I need a passport to go out there. I don't go anywhere. Everything I do is in the city. And I am just heartbroken as to what I see going on. And that's the only reason I would be that serious about considering it.
I mean, I've been telling clients for years now that Philly's as cool as it ever was, right? Like going back 200 years, like Philly was peaking, and it does feel a little bit different than it did, even a few months ago, a year ago.
We can bring it back. I know that.
Yeah.
I'll mention one other thing, Jake. One of the things we don't do in government, which I've been doing as a council person, the best ideas come from outside of government, come from the private sector. We passed the streetery legislation. That came from the restaurant people. Safe injection sites. I'm talking to all the major hospitals on how to solve that problem. Soliciting the outside world to help us solve the city problems is huge. And everyone in Philadelphia that I've asked to help, they're happy to help for free. But the one thing about Philadelphia is we have people that love this city and would love to help Philadelphia. And that to me is the number one asset we have in our city, the love of the city, of the residents of the city. The old joke was if you lived in Washington, D.C., people would say, where you're from. And when you live in Philadelphia, people say to you, what high school did you go to?
Right.
It's a very different city.
It's funny. That's true. Well, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate you being with us and everything you're doing. It's
And
good
Jake,
stuff.
my closing comment will be to everyone on this call. I have GPAR to thank for where I am today, because I was president of GPAR. I had no idea, didn't even want to become president again. It was Al Perry and Kurt Gasper who wanted me to become president in 2013, 14, and 15. And from that point, I got into council. If I had been president of GPAR, that never would have happened. I wouldn't be here today. So I owe a debt of gratitude to GPAR, its members, PAR, and NAR for all their support. So thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, Jake, I got a couple of things here to kind of hit on before we wrap this all up. As it relates to public safety, kudos to the councilman. He has done a tremendous amount of work that does not get the light of day on it. And that goes to research and the folks that he has been talking to. We've had a few conversations, and the level that he's trying to understand things like drug abuse and addiction and those kinds of things. He has really put his head down into that work, and it's to understand the core root of those issues. That really influences where he's going, and the willingness to go ahead and talk to people, make cold calls. It's something that it doesn't show up in the headline, but he has been putting that work in. So that's tremendous, because he's really trying to move things from an understanding perspective, as well as to let other people who know that stuff better than he does to help make good decisions, make good policy, and that kind of stuff like that. So I think that's a super cool thing to see. As it relates to the assessments, we put out the call to action. We've discussed this here. Point number 3 of the call to action is that we need citywide education and outreach. So if you send that message to council, that's one of the things that we're advocating for. So you can help amplify that. As it relates to that as well, next month, we're in the process of scheduling something with the Revenue Department. The Deputy Commissioner of Revenue is going to join us to help you guys all understand what all shakes out through this process. Ultimately, how do you go ahead and understand simply what's the tax bill? How do you file an appeal? Where do you send things into? So we are going to go ahead and do what we can to help you out, as well as for you to help your clients out. And then also too, we're going to do an outreach effort ourselves and partner up with other community stakeholders as we go into this next phase of this, once the budget is passed and we know where everything kind of shakes out. So again, it all starts with first, simply, please respond to the call to action. We need City Hall to hear your thoughts and your opinions. We need to amplify that realtor voice. Lots of great impact, or lots of great feedback in the chat. Sorry we can't get to all these questions. I know the councilman has a budget meeting he has to run off to. So thank you very much, Councilman Domb. Thanks, Jake. Everybody have a great day. And Thursday, listing contract, 1 o'clock. We'll see you there. Take care. Bye.